Today, let's talk about Ubiquiti's strange, interesting, but also worrisome adoption and connection process for its smart plug. So you may know Ubiquiti doesn't have too many Wi-Fi client devices. So I'm showing you two examples. This is the Wi-Fi small camera G3 instant. This is USP-Plug. For this type of tiny devices, when you do the initial setup, normally it's not that easy because they don't have display, they don't have way to hook up keyboard. It will be difficult to help it connect to Wi-Fi, right? So a common practice is, okay, these small devices will broadcast some temporary SSID, and then you use your, let's say, a smartphone, connect to your devices, do the initial setup, and then in the future it will connect using whatever Wi-Fi setting you give. But apparently Ubiquiti does things differently under the name of being user-friendly. On the screen, I show you the technical specs for these two small devices. The left one is for the camera, right one for the plug. As you can see, they both support Wi-Fi, but additional thing for the camera is it does support Bluetooth, which gives it an advantage when it comes to adoption. It will support Bluetooth adoption instead of the focus point for this video, which is the element adoption. Let me show you what I mean using iPad. This is the UniFi network controller running on iPad in the global site level setting. As you can see, the new device auto link setting is disabled. Later, you will know this will disable the possibility of adoption using Wi-Fi. I switch to the UniFi Protect app. Right after switch on the camera, I see this dialog. It's connected using Bluetooth. I can simply adopt it. Later, it will show me all the Wi-Fi SSIDs it can detect. I will not continue to really adopt it using Bluetooth. In fact, this is the typical way for a small device to be initially connected to your system if it does support Bluetooth. But this video is not about Bluetooth adoption. It's about Wi-Fi adoption. This is my lab environment. I use UDM Pro connected to a PoE switch. I do have multiple APs in the lab environment, but for this video, I only power on one AP just to simplify the scenarios. I'm going to use two Ubiquiti Wi-Fi devices. These two devices support different radio band. For USP-Plug, it only supports 2.4 GHz. Camera does support 5G. I'm going to go through three phases during the adoption process to show you what really happens in the system. First, before you even adopt the devices, how the system identify there are devices to be adopted. Then during adoption process, what really happens after it's adopted during your day-to-day operation, how the Wi-Fi connection works for these two devices. In this video, I'm going to use this type of screen layout, a SSH terminal. I'm going to log on to the AP to show you the backend configuration. I will have another Mac machine running. I will use it to capture Wi-Fi frames so that we can really understand which SSID is used, how the authentication works. Let's look at the UniFi network controller first. At this moment, I only have one AP powered on, and it's only broadcasting one SSID. And for this particular SSID, it's only using 5G Hz band. Go back to the devices. As you can see, now the USB plug is ready to be adopted. And if you go to the UniFi Protect, you can also see the G3 camera is also ready to be adopted. Okay, so we are ready. Let's get started. The first phase, before we do anything. So how the access point and the UniFi system know these two devices are powered on, they are ready to connect, they are ready to be adopted. Let's see. By the way, I have enabled the new Wi-Fi device outer link setting under the site settings level. That's why you can see those two UniFi devices, they are ready for adoption. Let me first SSH to the access point. Let me run command iwdev to display the current Wi-Fi devices. So the beginning part is about the 6 GHz. The UniFi camera and the plug, neither of them supports 6 GHz. So the settings in this part are not relevant to us. Let's move on to 5G. Under 5G, you see totally 6 devices. So the first one is using this SSID. It's used by the Wi-Fi mesh network, so it's not relevant to this video. And then the next one, ATH4, that's broadcasting using this element something SSID. This is our focus point because that's the exact internal SSID used by Ubiquiti Wi-Fi devices to adopt and to even connect. The ATH3, this is the SSID really created by me in my UniFi network. But you will see in the video, this one unfortunately is not used by the two Wi-Fi devices at all. ATH2 and the Wi-Fi 1, they are internal Wi-Fi devices. It's not relevant to this video, so we can ignore them. Okay, the last part is 2.4 gigahertz radio band. Very similar to 5G, but it doesn't have the Z mesh SSID. Why? Because I just showed you in UniFi Network Controller, I only enabled 5 GHz. So that's why it's not broadcasting under 2.4 GHz. But you see this familiar SSID. So it's element something. It's the exact same SSID as in 5 GHz. Different Wi-Fi devices, they work in different radio bands. That's why you can see the exact same SSID duplicated in different radio bands. Having checked the Linux level IWDV information, let's look at the UniFi's configuration file. Let me search the element SSID. So the first hit is under AAA.1. So AAA is for security setting. As you can see, for this particular SSID, the security is enabled. It will use WPA2, and just like a regular SSID you define, it will use the same process. The special element SSID is secured. It's not wide open. You cannot connect to it without knowing password. Okay, under the wireless.1 section, as you can see, the SSID is hidden. So by default, if you simply use your regular Wi-Fi device, you won't see the element SSID, but it is there. Just by default, it's hidden. So this is how it's configured in backend in the access point. Now let me capture the Wi-Fi frames using this Mac in both 2.4 GHz and 5 GHz so that we can see before we even do anything. Just because now the network controller and the UniFi Protect show these two Wi-Fi devices as ready to be adopted, what's really happening on the air. To save your time, I won't show you how I capture the Wi-Fi frames. I'm directly showing you the two captured files. The left one is for the USP-Plug, right one for the camera. Let's start with the plug, which is under the 2.4 GHz radio band. So there are a lot of Wi-Fi frames. I already filtered on the MAC address of the USP-Plug. Where do I get it? You can easily get it from the UniFi Network Controller, even though it's not adopted yet. If you click on it, the only real information it shows you is the MAC address. In fact, UniFi Controller knows the MAC address from these Wi-Fi frames we are going to talk about. Let's answer the first question. As we mentioned, this particular SSID, the element something, it's hidden. The AP will not broadcast the beacon frames like regular SSID. This USP-Plug doesn't know the existence of this SSID at all, right? How it find it out? See the very first frames right after it's powered on. The very first frame sent from it is to RF destination, which means this is a broadcast frame. The type is a probe request, and the SSID is wildcard, which means right after it's powered on, because it's not adopted to any UniFi system, the very first question it asks is, okay, all the APs in the world, let me know what are the SSIDs you broadcast. Okay, see all the responses it receives. Basically, it received replies from 3 type of access points. First, of course, from this U6 enterprise. That type of information is really needed by this plug in my testing. And the second type is, for example, this Z2, Z16, Z12. They are broadcasted by my home network. Remember, this is just my lab environment, right? So I have a home network running in parallel. They also replied. And the third type of information is the ones from my neighbor. They also have wireless routers, so they may also reply if they receive this ask. This poor device received all the information. At this moment, this plug doesn't know which one to pick at all. And in fact, it doesn't need to know, because it simply tell all the APs, if you are UniFi AP, if your network controller wants to adopt me, you need to take action. At this moment, this plug simply sits in waiting mode. Let me find the first element SSID reply. Yes, this one. Even though this particular SSID is hidden, because this plug sent a wildcast broadcast probe request, this AP did reply. At this moment, this plug doesn't know this element SID is so important, it only need this SSID to survive. No, at this moment, this plug doesn't know that yet. Then let's answer another question. See the UniFi controller? It does show, okay, there is a USP-Plug ready to be adopted. How it knows that? Okay, that's because this plug sent out this probe request. And if you click on the details in the end for vendor specific information, you can see some special encoded information. You can see this USP-Plug's MAC address, for example, right? I believe it contains the model information and it tells the AP, okay, I am a USP-Plug. It contains all the basic important information so that UniFi network controller knows this USP-Plug wants to be adopted. Because we haven't clicked the link to adopt the USP-Plug yet, this plug doesn't know which reply is important to it. This is the situation for the USP-Plug, and a very similar situation for the camera. So I won't go through all the details. They behave the same. The only difference is for the camera, everything happens in the 5G Hz band. Now let's move on to the next phase. Now we can start adopting these two devices. So let me capture the Wi-Fi frames and adopt these two devices, and then I will show you the captured Wi-Fi frames in the Mac machine. Start capturing. In UniFi network controller for USP-Plug, click adopt device. As you can see, it's adopted. In the Mac, I can stop capturing and I will switch to 5G Hz to capture the Wi-Fi frames for the G3 camera. I won't show you the boring details. I will directly show you the captured frames. You see two Wireshark windows, the left one for the plug, right one for the camera. In the beginning of both files, you can see they are pretty similar to what you already saw in previous phase for pre-adoption, right? But now we are in adoption phase. When this part of packages were captured, we haven't clicked the adopt device button on UniFi controller yet. So that's why you see similar situation. But if you scroll to somewhere in the middle, yes, and similarly for the camera, scroll to the middle, okay, you may recognize them right away. They are for the WPA2 authentication. That means when this key exchange happened, it's being adopted. I will only use the USP-Plug as example for this adoption phase. Let's scroll to some a little bit early phase. See this element SSID probe response? It is from the U6 Enterprise AP to the USP-Plug. When this frame was sent, we haven't started the adoption process yet. If you check its Ubiquiti specific tag value, you can see a very short 19-byte long tag. It doesn't have a lot of information. But if you check the probe response right before the authentication process, for example this one, you can see Ubiquiti vendor specific tag. The tag length is 145, much longer, and it contains much more encoded information. Basically, by sending this probe response, the AP notifies the plug, okay, this is the information you need to connect to me. I am starting the adoption process. See the authentication, it's sent from the plug to the AP. This is the Wi-Fi client. U6 Enterprise is the access point. So the client needs to initiate the authentication. That's why the authentication was sent from the plug to the AP. And then the AP says, yes, okay, you can continue. The plug will start the association and then followed by the key exchanges. Here you may have questions already. How the USP-Plug knows the password? That's the concern I'm going to talk about in the end of the video. So the way I observe is somehow U6 Enterprise AP notifies the USP-Plug about the security settings and about the keys to connect to the AP. I don't think it's hard-coded in the USP-Plug, and it must be provided dynamically during the adoption process by the UniFi AP. And there's no any UniFi document about it. That's the root cause for my concern. But basically, the Ubiquiti tag thing is just something I observe, and I think it is somehow related to the password. If I am wrong, or if you know how the device knows the password to connect to AP, let me know. So right after the key exchange complete, the authentication process finished, and the plug is successfully connected to the AP. The adoption process ended. Okay, so now the USP-Plug is officially part of this UniFi network. In the right side for the camera, similar thing happens. I won't explore the details. But before we switch to the third phase, let's check what the controller is showing about the Wi-Fi network information for the USP-Plug. If I click on it, see the Wi-Fi network, it says Z mesh. It's a lie. You know it, right? You can see from the captured Wi-Fi frame, it is using this element SSID. There's no authentication connection process to Z mesh network at all. And for my Z mesh Wi-Fi network, I even set it to 5G only on purpose. Remember, this USP-Plug can only connect to 2.4G, right? So this is a lie. Similarly, for this G3 camera, if you check the Wi-Fi information, it says UniFi wireless. It even doesn't say which SSID. It tries to hide the details on purpose. Now we can proceed to the last part, which is during the day-to-day operation, how the two devices are connected to the Wi-Fi network. Whether it will connect to the Z mesh, which is my custom SSID, or they will still connect to the internal element SSID. Let's find it out. The way I test it is I will start capturing here in the Mac, and then I will restart each device so that I can capture the whole process for it to connect to Wi-Fi network again, just to simulate its daily operation. I won't show you the detailed steps. I will directly show you the captured package. You see the captured frames side by side for the two devices. Left side for the USB plug. As you can see in the very beginning, it still sends out some probe request. That's just normal, regular client station behavior, because the Wi-Fi client needs to know whether the AP even still exists, whether it's still broadcasting that particular SSID. So how it knows that? It need to send out probe request. But if you check some of them, let's say the response from the AP to the USB plug for this element SSID, if you check the Ubiquiti specific tag, you can see it's not very long. Apparently, it doesn't contain the long information as in the adoption process, because the USB plug already knows the password and how to connect to the U6 enterprise, right? Even you check the last response right before the authentication process, it's the similar situation. So it's a very short tag. Okay, then you can see in the authentication process, nothing special. It's just regular WPA2 security process, and you can validate it does use the element SSID. It is not using my Z-Mesh SSID. It's still using the internal SSID even for its day-to-day connection. So this element SSID is not just used for adoption. It is used for the future connection as well. You can even validate it. The USB plug is already adopted, right? If you go to the setting, go to the same checkbox again, you can see it's grayed out. It tells you you have to remove the USB plug so that this option can be disabled. To make sure you understand how ridiculous it is, I'm showing you two screenshots side by side. The left one was the one before you adopt the USB plug. The right one is after you adopt it. In the left side, it says, okay, it's a very user-friendly way to adopt it, and if you want it, you need to enable it. But in the right side, it says, now you already adopted, sorry, you cannot disable it anymore because it's needed for the USB plug to continue to function. So the left side is a misleading, incomplete information, to say the least. There's nothing special about the post-adoption process. It's just regular Wi-Fi client connection process. About this camera, remember in the beginning of the video I mentioned if you choose to adopt it using Bluetooth, in that process, you need to choose your Wi-Fi SSID and provide password, right? If you go with that adoption process, this camera will connect to your regular Wi-Fi SSID in the future. But for this Wi-Fi element adoption process, it will stick to this internal element SSID. Okay, we are at the end of the video. Let me summarize. This special element SSID is secretly created by the AP without notifying the users or the details. There's no any official information about how the device even knows the Wi-Fi password during the adoption process. And then to make it even worse, this internal element SSID is not just used for adoption, it's also used for future connection. The AP will open a SSID in a radio band. I don't want to broadcast anything, and the AP decides to do that anyway. I have this video completely based on my own research and observations and testings. If you see anything wrong in the video, please let me know in the comments area. Okay? Thanks for watching.